Well, in other headlines in the top five, Russia warns that a flare-up in tensions on the Korean Peninsula could spin out of control. Moscow urges all sides involved in the standoff to refrain from fanning the flame.
In
this case, it worries us that along with the adequate reaction of the UN Security Council and the collective reaction of the world community, there are unilateral actions taken against North Korea that are demonstrated by increasing military activity. We can let the situation simply slip out of control, and this will spiral into a vicious cycle.
Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says unilateral actions by West against Pyongyang will lead to an escalation of military activities. Both Russia and China strongly reject increasing military activities in the region. Tensions started escalating following the U.S. joint military drills with South Korea. The Pentagon's flying of nuclear-capable bombers, as well as engineering further sanctions against the North, are driving the region to the edge of a full-blown conflict. Mark Mason is a political commentator who joins us from San Francisco. Mark Mason, are we looking at a full-blown conflict coming?
We're looking at a very dangerous situation, which is recognized by everyone everywhere, that the U.S. would fly stealth bombers over South Korea and drop dummy bombs is it's beyond comprehension. It's incredibly dangerous. I would have to say that it was stupid, unbelievably stupid. No one on the planet has any misgivings or misunderstandings that the United States is the most powerful military nation on the planet. If the United States wanted to, it could incinerate North Korea in about 10 minutes. So this kind of provocative act is dangerous and should be condemned. What we need, desperately need, and has not been on the forefront of the international community is arms control. And we need, the only way out of this is if we're going to come together on an international scale, if not through the Conference on Disarmament, through the UN that had suggested in January that there be an open-ended discussion and meeting on nuclear disarmament. That's the only way out. We're going to have to sit down at the table and figure out how are we going to address human conflicts here on the streets of Oakland, California. How are we going to address conflicts, human conflicts on the streets of a neighboring city? How are we going to, as human beings on an international scale and between international states, how are we going to address human conflicts that are inevitable? We can't avoid human conflicts, but we desperately need a discussion about how we're going to address our global differences.
And I guess the thrust of this does lie in what you're saying there, because, okay, I'm not trying to justify threats coming from North Korea, nuclear threats, but at the same time, it doesn't appear that the U.S. is willing to push for what many are calling, this is just a bluff of what North Korea wants, which is basically normalization with South Korea, U.S. troops to leave, and also, obviously, to get aid from the U.S. So why isn't the U.S. pushing more on the diplomatic front?
Well, in that context, although North Korea has stepped up its sort of aggressive rhetoric, it still maintains $2 billion per year trade relations with South Korea. So we know something else is going on here. The United States has blocked efforts for more than a decade at the conference, the International Conference on Disarmament, blocked efforts to come to an international agreement on nuclear fissile material that could be used to create nuclear weapons. Pakistan has most recently blocked efforts also. The U.S. is blocking, and has blocked since last year, the UN attempts to create a treaty on so-called standard non-nuclear weapons, the UN Treaty on Non-Nuclear Weapons. They've blocked that since last summer. So we have a context where we need to address, like, what's the motivation that's driving behind the U.S. and there's the arms control that's not moving forward, that's being blocked, and we have massive $70 billion per year profits for the non-nuclear standard weapons, and we have a motivation that's driven primarily by sort of the empire of the United States and the arms, munitions, and arms manufacturers behind this.
Well, it's good talking to you. Thank you very much. Mark Mason, political commentator there from San Francisco.